"Grandpa, my parents will take your money after the party today," whispered my 8-year-old granddaughter, and her words struck like thunder, shattering the illusion of family love. I, a trusting grandfather who had always supported them, left early, hiding my shock behind a mask of fatigue. But what I did next, a cunning plan for revenge for their betrayal, shocked everyone. I beat them at their own game, and they will never forget it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I know what you're thinking, Dad, but hear me out. Harry's voice cracked through the phone, cutting through the Saturday morning, quiet like a rusty blade. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. 7 a.m. calls weren't Harry's style, especially not with that nervous tremor I recognized from his teenage years when he'd wrecked my truck. "What sounds strange, son?" I settled back into my kitchen chair, watching steam rise from my coffee while morning light painted golden squares across yesterday's unread newspaper. "Well, Mary really wants... we both think you should definitely come to Alexa's birthday party today." The words tumbled out too fast, like he'd rehearsed them but forgotten the rhythm. Something cold settled in my chest. Since when did they need to convince me to see my granddaughter? "Harry, when have I ever missed one of Alexa's birthdays?" No, that's not what I meant." A pause. I heard what sounded like Mary's voice in the background, sharp and insistent. "It's just that Mary's been planning this for weeks, and she specifically asked me to call and make sure you're coming." I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the cream swirl into tiny hurricanes. Mary specifically asking? The same Mary who usually treated my presence like a necessary inconvenience? That's thoughtful of her. "Yeah, she's really excited about it." Harry's laugh sounded forced, metallic. "The party starts at 2, but maybe you could come a little early. We wanted to talk about some family stuff." The spoon clinked against the mug as I set it down. Family stuff. In 3 years of widowhood, family stuff had never required special conversations. What kind of family stuff? "Oh, just planning things. Future things. Mary has some ideas about how we can all be more involved with each other." I walked to the window, phone pressed to my ear, watching Mrs. Henderson across the street. Water her flower boxes, Mary with ideas about family involvement. The woman who'd spent Christmas dinner last year checking her phone every 5 minutes. "That sounds nice, Harry." I kept my voice level, but my businessman's instincts were screaming. 30 years of reading people across conference tables had taught me when someone was selling something they didn't believe in themselves. "Great. So you'll be there early? Maybe around 1:30? I glanced at the refrigerator, where Alexa's latest drawing hung next to my shopping list. A crooked house with stick figures labeled Grandpa, Daddy, Mommy, and me in purple crayon. That little girl was the brightest spot in my world since Ellen died. Of course I'll be there early. I wouldn't miss Alexa's day for anything. "Perfect. And Dad?" Harry's voice dropped lower. "Just keep an open mind about what we want to discuss, okay? It's all about making sure everyone's taken care of." The line went dead before I could ask what he meant by everyone's taken care of. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then set it on the counter next to my untouched newspaper. Something wasn't right. Harry's voice had carried that same guilty undertone I remembered from when he was 8 and had borrowed money from Ellen's purse for candy. But this felt bigger than childhood mischief. I poured fresh coffee and tried to shake off the unease. Maybe Mary genuinely wanted to improve family relationships. Maybe I was reading too much into a simple invitation. But as I sat back down with my coffee, I couldn't stop thinking about that phrase, making sure everyone's taken care of. In my experience, when people started talking about taking care of everyone, they usually meant taking care of themselves first. I looked at Alexa's drawing again and smiled despite my concerns. Whatever Harry and Mary had planned to discuss, it could wait until after I'd celebrated my granddaughter's 8th birthday. Some things were more important than adult complications. Still, I made a mental note to listen carefully to whatever they want to talk about. 20 minutes later, I stood in my bedroom closet, staring at shirts Ellen would never see me wear again. The blue Oxford brought back her funeral, how Mary had whispered about all this space while we buried my wife. Even then, something in her tone had felt calculating. I pulled the shirt from its hanger and caught my reflection in the mirror. $70,000. That's what I'd given them over the past 3 years. Mortgage payments, car loans, Alexa's private school tuition. Ellen would have called it excessive, but she'd also understood that Alexa deserved better than her parents could provide alone. My wallet sat heavy in my back pocket as I dressed. 3 credit cards maxed out for Harry's emergencies, the urgent transmission repair that turned into a full engine rebuild, Mary's temporary need for grocery money that became a monthly expectation, each request delivered with Harry's shamefaced explanations and Mary's perfectly timed gratitude. Walking to the kitchen for my keys, I passed the refrigerator, where Alexa's latest drawing hung beside my grocery list. She'd drawn our last fishing trip, 2 stick figures by a blue crayon lake, both smiling. "Best day ever, Grandpa," written in purple marker along the bottom. That's when Mary's recent suggestion hit me with fresh clarity. 3 weeks ago, standing in this exact spot, she'd looked around my kitchen and said, "Norman, don't you think this house is getting too big for you? There are lovely assisted living communities where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance." Harry had quickly changed the subject to Alexa's softball season, but Mary's eyes had lingered on my granite countertops, the expensive appliances Ellen and I had chosen together, the same calculating look she'd worn at the funeral. I grabbed my car keys from the counter, remembering Ellen's last coherent words. "Promise me you'll always take care of Alexa, but watch Harry carefully. He's weak, and weak people make dangerous choices when someone strong is whispering in their ear." At the time, I'd thought she meant his drinking buddies or get-rich-quick schemes. Now, I wondered if Ellen had seen something in Mary that I'd missed. The way she'd started every conversation about money with Alexa's needs, making me feel selfish for questioning the expenses. The garage door opener hummed as morning light streamed across my Mercedes. Ellen's car still sat in her spot, covered and pristine. I'd kept making payments on it for months after her death, unable to admit she was really gone. Maybe that's what they were counting on, my inability to say no when it came to family. The grandfather who'd rather pay than disappoint, who'd rather trust than investigate. But 40 years in construction had taught me to check foundations before building anything important. I backed out of the driveway slowly, watching my house shrink in the rearview mirror. By tonight, after whatever conversation Harry and Mary had planned, I suspected I'd see everything differently. For now, I needed to buy my granddaughter a birthday present, something special, perhaps the last gift I'd give her before everything changed. Northtown Mall buzzed with Saturday morning energy as I parked near the main entrance. 8:15, and already families were streaming toward the toy stores. Perfect timing for Alexa's gifts. The Lego architecture section drew me immediately. Alexa had been fascinated by buildings since her school field trip to the Space Needle last month. The Statue of Liberty set caught my eye, detailed enough to challenge her growing skills, but not overwhelming. $180 seemed reasonable for something that would occupy her curious mind for weeks. "Excellent choice, sir." The young clerk smiled as he rang up my purchase. "My daughter loves this series. Would you like gift wrapping?" "Please. It's for my granddaughter's 8th birthday." Next stop, sporting goods. Alexa had mentioned wanting a real bicycle, not the tiny pink thing she'd outgrown. The Trek model displayed near the window looked perfect. Lightweight frame, handbrakes she could manage, reflective strips for safety. $320, but her delighted face would be worth every penny. Loading the bicycle box into my SUV, I checked my watch. 9:10. Plenty of time for one more stop. Norman! What a lovely surprise. Dorothy Henderson materialized beside my car, clutching a shopping bag from the bookstore. My neighbor of 15 years looked genuinely pleased to see me, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. "Dorothy, good morning. Starting your weekend shopping early?" "Oh, you know me. I like beating the crowds." She gestured toward the mall entrance. "Though I suppose you're here for birthday preparations. Harry mentioned Alexa's party when I saw him last week." "He mentioned it?" I closed the SUV's rear hatch, curious. "Where did you run into him?" "Downtown, actually. Tuesday morning, I think it was. Mary was with him, and they were coming out of First National Bank with quite a stack of papers." Dorothy chuckled, looked very official and serious. Probably refinancing something the way young people do these days. Tuesday. 4 days ago. Harry hadn't mentioned any banking business during his nervous phone call this morning. But then again, why would he? People handled financial matters all the time without broadcasting details. Probably just routine business, I said, shifting my shopping bags to my other hand. Of course, dear. None of my concern, anyway. Dorothy patted my arm affectionately. Well, I'd better let you finish your shopping. Give my love to that sweet granddaughter of yours. She bustled away toward the bookstore, leaving me standing beside my car with a vague sense of unease. Banking business on Tuesday, nervous phone call on Saturday. The timing felt oddly coincidental, but then again, Harry always seemed to be juggling some financial crisis or another. I shook off the feeling and headed toward the florist shop near the mall's east entrance. Mary had always appreciated flowers, and white roses would make a thoughtful gesture for the hostess of Alexa's party. The florist, a middle-aged woman with dirt under her fingernails, wrapped a dozen long-stemmed roses in silver paper with practiced efficiency. These are beautiful, she said, adjusting the ribbon. Special occasion? My granddaughter's birthday party. They're for her mother. How thoughtful. She'll love them. $28 for flowers that would wilt in a week, but Mary's pleased expression would be worth the expense. These small gestures mattered in maintaining family harmony, especially when underlying tensions existed. By 9:30, my SUV was loaded with packages that represented nearly $600 of birthday celebration. The Lego set, bicycle, roses, and the card I'd selected, each item chosen with Alexa's happiness in mind. This was what grandfathers did. They spoiled their grandchildren shamelessly and enjoyed every moment of it. Driving home through Saturday morning traffic, I found myself thinking about Dorothy's casual observation. Harry and Mary at the bank with papers, serious expressions. Official business that Harry hadn't bothered mentioning. But then again, married couples handled countless administrative tasks without involving extended family. Insurance updates, mortgage refinancing, college savings accounts for Alexa. Any number of legitimate reasons could explain their downtown visit. Still, as I turned into my driveway, I couldn't quite dismiss the small voice in my head that wondered why Harry had sounded so nervous this morning, if everything was truly as routine as it appeared. After wrapping Alexa's gifts and grabbing a quick lunch, I arrived at Harry's house precisely at 2 o'clock. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. Norman! Mary practically sang my name, her arms spreading wide as if we hadn't seen each other in months rather than weeks. You look absolutely wonderful today. This enthusiasm felt foreign. Mary usually offered a polite smile and quick hug before disappearing into kitchen duties. Today she touched my arm twice while speaking, her eyes bright with an energy I'd never seen directed at me before. Thank you, Mary. The party looks lovely. I stepped inside, carrying the wrapped bicycle box and gift bag containing the Lego set. Colorful streamers hung from every doorway, and balloon clusters filled each corner. Far more elaborate than previous birthday celebrations. Dad, there he is! Harry appeared from the living room, his voice carrying across the house like a carnival barker's. Come meet Mike from work. Mike, this is my amazing father I've told you so much about. Amazing father? Harry's workplace conversations about me typically focused on my old-fashioned business methods, or retirement stubbornness. But today he clapped my shoulder with theatrical enthusiasm, his laugh echoing too loudly in the decorated hallway. The living room buzzed with familiar faces. The Johnsons from next door chatted near the fireplace, while Mrs. Smith sat carefully on the couch, observing everything with sharp eyes. Carlos and Elena Martinez helped their son Tommy arrange party games on the coffee table. Grandpa! Alexa ran toward me, her genuine smile cutting through the artificial atmosphere like sunlight. She wrapped her arms around my waist, and for a moment the world felt normal again. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I handed her the gift bag. This one first, then the big surprise. She unwrapped the Lego architecture set with careful fingers, her eyes widening at the Statue of Liberty, image on the box. But when she looked up to thank me, something flickered across her face, a shadow of sadness that vanished when Mary approached. Isn't Grandpa generous, honey? Say thank you properly. Thank you, Grandpa. It's really cool. Alexa's voice carried genuine appreciation mixed with something else. Guilt? Worry? An 8-year-old shouldn't sound so burdened during her own birthday party. Harry guided me toward the kitchen where Mike Davidson nursed a beer and made small talk about car sales. The conversation flowed normally enough, but Harry kept interjecting with unnecessary compliments about my business wisdom and family leadership. Each comment felt rehearsed, like lines from a script he'd memorized poorly. Norman knows everything about building successful relationships, Harry announced to Mike. He's taught me so much about trust and family loyalty. Trust and family loyalty. Strange topics for a casual party conversation, especially delivered with Harry's current manic intensity. Mike nodded politely, clearly uncomfortable with Harry's excessive praise of his own father. Mary reappeared with a plate of appetizers, positioning herself between me and the other guests. Norman, you simply must try these canapes. I made them especially thinking of your sophisticated tastes. My sophisticated tastes? Mary had never paid attention to my food preferences beyond ensuring adequate quantities appeared at family gatherings. Now she hovered beside me, refilling my wine glass before it emptied, and asking about my comfort level every few minutes. From across the room, I watched Alexa opening cards from school friends. Her movement seemed mechanical, polite, but distant. When Tommy Martinez asked about her new Lego set, she nodded and smiled appropriately. But her responses lacked the genuine excitement I'd expected. She's growing up so fast, Mrs. Smith observed, settling beside me on the couch. Such a thoughtful child. She asked me last week if grandparents and parents ever disagree about important decisions. My wine glass paused halfway to my lips. What did you tell her? That families work through differences with love and honesty. Mrs. Smith studied Alexa with concerned eyes, though she seemed troubled by something beyond normal childhood worries. Across the room, Harry and Mary exchanged a quick glance, the kind of wordless communication that suggested coordination. They'd been doing that all afternoon, I realized. Brief eye contact, subtle nods, perfectly timed interruptions when conversations approached certain topics. The afternoon stretched on with forced merriment and careful choreography. Every smile felt calculated, every laugh slightly too loud, every gesture of family affection performed for an audience. Only Alexa's behavior toward me remained authentic, though shadowed by whatever burden she carried. As the party wound toward its conclusion and guests began gathering their belongings, Harry caught my attention with an overly casual gesture. Dad, stick around after everyone leaves, okay? Mary and I have been looking forward to that family chat we mentioned. The artificial cheerfulness began weighing on me like humidity before a storm. I excused myself with a polite smile, mentioning the bathroom down the hallway. Mary jumped up immediately, offering directions I didn't need, her concern feeling rehearsed rather than genuine. Walking away from the party noise, I noticed Alexa watching me from beside the gift table. Something in her expression, worry mixed with determination, made me pause. When I reached the hallway lined with family photos, small footsteps followed behind me. "Grandpa?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I turned to find her glancing back toward the living room, ensuring we were alone. The birthday girl, who should have been glowing with excitement, looked instead like she carried the weight of the world on 8-year-old shoulders. "What is it, sweetheart?" I knelt to her eye level, recognizing the serious expression she'd inherited from Ellen. "You look troubled." She bit her lower lip, a gesture that reminded me painfully of her grandmother during difficult conversations. "I need to tell you something important about Mom and Dad." My chest tightened. "What about them, honey?" "They're planning to take your money tonight." The words tumbled out in a rush, as if she'd been rehearsing them. "After everyone goes home. I heard them talking last night, when I was supposed to be sleeping." The hallway seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, fighting to keep my expression calm for her sake. "What exactly did you hear?" "Mom said you have too much money for an old man living alone." Alexa's voice dropped even lower. "She told Dad they were going to fix that problem tonight. Dad seemed scared, but Mom said the papers from the bank would make everything legal." Papers from the bank. Tuesday's visit that Dorothy Henderson had mentioned suddenly made terrible sense. My business instincts, dormant for years, roared back to life with crystalline clarity. "Did they say anything else?" I asked gently. though my mind raced with implications I hoped an 8-year-old couldn't understand. Dad kept saying, "What if he finds out?" And Mom said it would be too late by then. Tears welled in her eyes. "Grandpa, I don't want them to take your money." "You're the only one who really listens to me." I pulled her into a fierce hug, feeling her small body trembling against mine. Ellen's granddaughter, carrying adult secrets that no child should bear. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing they'd planned this within earshot of innocent ears. "Listen to me carefully," I whispered into her hair. "You did the right thing telling me. But we need to keep this our secret for now, okay? Can you do that?" She nodded against my shoulder. "Are you going to stop them?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to handle everything." I held her at arm's length, making sure she could see the certainty in my eyes. "But we need to go back to your party now and act normal. Can you be brave for me?" "I think so." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Will you still love me if Mom and Dad get mad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Alexa, nothing your parents do could ever change how much I love you. Nothing. Do you understand?" Relief flooded her face, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her all afternoon. "I love you too, Grandpa." Hand in hand, we walked back toward the party sounds. But everything had changed in those few whispered minutes. The son I'd raised, the daughter-in-law I'd supported, the family I'd trusted with my heart. All of it now viewed through the lens of calculated betrayal. As we rejoined the celebration, I caught Harry's eyes across the room. He smiled and waved, the same false enthusiasm that had puzzled me earlier. Now I understood exactly what that performance was designed to accomplish. Returning to the party felt like walking onto a stage where everyone else had forgotten they were acting. I settled back into conversations with the natural ease that 40 years of business negotiations had taught me, while internally cataloging every glance between Harry and Mary with devastating new clarity. Mrs. Smith was discussing her garden when I noticed Harry checking his watch for the third time in 10 minutes. Mary appeared beside him immediately, their brief eye contact now obviously coordinated rather than coincidental. They were managing me, I realized, ensuring I stayed comfortable, engaged, and most importantly, present for whatever they had planned after the guests departed. "Norman, how about some more wine?" Mary's hand touched my arm with practiced concern. "You look a bit pale. Are you feeling all right?" Pale. Yes, I probably was. Learning that your family planned to steal your life's work might do that to a person. But I managed a tired smile that wasn't entirely manufactured, just a slight headache. But I'm fine. Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the kind of micro-expression I'd learned to read in boardroom adversaries. Relief mixed with calculation. A tired, slightly unwell grandfather would be easier to manipulate than an alert one. For the next hour, I played my part perfectly. Gracious grandfather, generous family patriarch, aging man perhaps not quite as sharp as he once was. I accepted their attentions, praised their hospitality, and observed their increasingly obvious coordination with the detached interest of studying a chess opponent's strategy. Harry kept steering conversations away from financial topics, whenever guests mentioned the economy or retirement planning. Mary redirected discussions about my house, my health, my future living arrangements. They were managing information flow, ensuring nothing conflicted with whatever narrative they'd constructed for tonight's important family discussion. Around 5:30, as afternoon shadows lengthened and guests began collecting their belongings, I announced my intention to leave. I think I should head home early. This headache isn't improving. The effect was immediate. Harry and Mary exchanged a look of genuine alarm. "Dad, wait!" Harry moved to block my path to the door. "We really wanted to talk about those important family matters we mentioned. Remember? You promised to stay after everyone left." "Perhaps another time," I said, maintaining the weary grandfather persona. "I really need to rest." "But Norman," Mary stepped closer, her voice taking on urgent undertones, "we have something special planned for tonight, something we've been preparing for weeks." Something they'd been preparing for weeks. The bank visit Dorothy Henderson witnessed. Legal documents, plans that required my presence and cooperation. I could see the desperation creeping into their performance as their carefully orchestrated timeline threatened to collapse. "I'm sure it can wait until tomorrow," I replied gently. Family isn't going anywhere. Harry's face flushed. Actually, Dad, there are some time-sensitive issues we need to discuss. Financial matters. That can't wait. Financial matters that can't wait. How interesting that Harry would phrase it exactly that way. I filed the comment away with all the other intelligence I'd gathered throughout this surreal afternoon. Tomorrow, son, I promise. I turned toward Alexa, who had been watching our exchange with worried eyes. Kneeling to her level, I pulled her into what might be our last innocent embrace before everything changed. Thank you for the most wonderful birthday party, sweetheart. Thank you for my presents, Grandpa. Her small arms tightened around my neck. I love you so much. I love you too, more than you'll ever know. I whispered against her ear, quiet enough that only she could hear. Everything will be okay. Standing, I felt Harry's hand on my shoulder, heavier than necessary, almost restraining. Dad, please, just give us an hour. 1 hour to discuss these important family decisions. I looked into my son's eyes and saw not the boy I'd raised, but a desperate man whose greed had overwhelmed whatever love remained. The realization cut deeper than I'd expected, but my voice remained steady. Another time, Harry. I need to go home now. Walking to my car while they watched from the doorway, Mary whispering urgently in Harry's ear, both of them radiating frustrated tension, I felt the weight of performance finally lifting from my shoulders. Alone in my Mercedes, I sat for a moment in their driveway, processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. My family had planned to rob me. Tonight, with legal documents and careful preparation. Starting the engine, I pulled away from the house where I had celebrated what might be my last normal family gathering. Inside my house, the silence felt different than it had that morning. No longer peaceful, pregnant with purpose. I walked directly to my home office, the room where I'd built my construction business from a single truck and stubborn determination. 40 years of important documents lived in the wall, safe behind Ellen's portrait, as I spun the combination lock. Muscle memory from decades of business dealings guided my fingers. 1959, Ellen's birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me that her memory would help me protect what we'd built together. The documents told a story I'd been too trusting to read properly. Bank statements revealing the pattern of financial requests that had escalated from hundreds to thousands over 3 years. Investment portfolios worth far more than Harry or Mary realized. Property deeds for rental properties they didn't know existed, and most importantly, records of every payment I'd made to support their lifestyle. 247 individual transactions. I documented everything with the methodical precision that had made my business successful. Mortgage payments, car repairs, medical bills, private school tuition for Alexa. Each payment justified by some family emergency or opportunity that seemed reasonable at the time. Sitting at my desk with Ellen's photo watching from the bookshelf, I finally saw the manipulation clearly. The escalating requests had been conditioning, training me to say yes to increasingly larger amounts. Mary's suggestions about assisted living weren't concern for my welfare. They were reconnaissance for tonight's planned theft. Every mortgage payment, every tuition check, I said aloud to Ellen's photograph. They've been planning this for months. My phone sat silent on the desk. Harry and Mary would be scrambling right now, trying to figure out how to proceed without me present for their important family discussion. The thought gave me a grim satisfaction. Opening my business card file, I found James Miller's personal number. 20 years of friendship and professional respect with the vice president of First National Bank. James would remember the careful, detail-oriented contractor who'd never missed a payment or broken a promise. More importantly, he'd understand exactly what legal documents obtained under false pretenses actually meant. The clock showed 9:30 p.m., too late for business calls, but I made a note for tomorrow morning. First priority, understanding exactly what papers Harry and Mary had obtained and how to neutralize their legal effectiveness. Next, I reviewed my will and trust documents, standard arrangements that left everything to Harry, with provisions for Alexa's education and future. Written when I still believed my son possessed integrity and love for his family, rather than simply greed for our money. Those documents would need immediate revision. Catherine Davis had notarized most of my legal paperwork over the years, independent, discreet, and unconnected to any bank where Harry and Mary might have allies. Another call for tomorrow morning. Spreading the investment statements across my desk like battle plans, I calculated my actual net worth for the first time in years. $2.3 million in liquid assets, plus 3 rental properties, plus this house with no mortgage. Far more than Harry and Mary suspected, and certainly more than they could steal in one evening's legal maneuvering. But this wasn't about money. This was about justice for an 8-year-old girl whose parents were willing to traumatize her with adult secrets. This was about punishment for adults who'd exploit an elderly man's love for his family. This was about ensuring that betrayal came with consequences. Ellen's voice echoed from our last conversation. Watch Harry carefully. Weak people make dangerous choices when someone strong is whispering in their ear. Now I understood. Mary had been whispering for 3 years, and Harry had chosen greed over family loyalty at every turn. My phone rang suddenly, jarring me from planning. Harry's name appeared on the caller ID. I let it ring. Sunday morning brought clarity that a restless night had failed to provide. After finally falling asleep near dawn, I woke with my businessman's instincts fully engaged and a specific plan forming. Over coffee in my home office, I opened my business contact file to James Miller's personal number. 9 o'clock seemed appropriate for calling an old friend about financial matters. James and I had maintained our friendship through 20 years of loans, investments, and the gradual success of price construction. He'd trust a call from me, especially about portfolio management. James, sorry to bother you on Sunday morning, I began when he answered. I've been reviewing my investment portfolio and wanted to get your thoughts on some consolidation ideas. Norman, always good to hear from you. His voice carried genuine warmth. What's on your mind? I'm considering simplifying my accounts, maybe centralizing everything for easier management. What are current banking policies on financial assistance programs? Well, there are several options depending on your needs. Are you thinking about automated services or more comprehensive management assistance? Perfect opening. Actually, I've been wondering about power of attorney arrangements, conservatorship options. Had any clients dealing with those recently? James paused, and I could almost hear him considering confidentiality boundaries. Funny you should ask. Just last week, I had a couple inquiring about guardianship procedures for an elderly family member. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. Oh? Complex process, I imagine. Actually, they seemed quite prepared. Had done considerable research on conservatorship requirements, documentation timelines. Very thorough people. Very thorough. My son and daughter-in-law had researched exactly how to steal my independence with legal precision. That's thoughtful of them to help their family. They were asking specific questions about mental competency evaluations, financial management documentation, timelines for court approval. James's professional knowledge was exactly what I needed. They understood the terminology better than most attorneys I've worked with. Mental competency evaluations, court approval timelines. They'd planned to have me declared incompetent and seize control of everything I'd spent 40 years building. The scope of their betrayal kept expanding beyond what I'd imagined possible. Did they seem confident about their situation? I asked carefully. Absolutely. They mentioned having documentation ready, medical opinions prepared, said they expected the process to move quickly once initiated. James chuckled. Most families aren't nearly so organized when dealing with elderly care transitions. Elderly care transitions. The euphemism made my hands clench around the phone. They'd researched how to institutionalize me while stealing my wealth, and they'd done it with systematic, professional thoroughness. Sounds like they really cared about their family members' welfare, I managed. That's what struck me most. How much preparation they'd put into ensuring everything would be legally proper and swift. They asked about expedited processes, emergency conservatorship procedures, emergency conservatorship, for situations where immediate action was necessary to protect someone's assets from their own incompetence. Hearing my own situation described in clinical banking terms felt surreal. Well, I appreciate the information, James. Gives me a better sense of available options. Anytime, Norman. Though honestly, you seem sharper than men half your age. Can't imagine you needing that kind of assistance for decades yet. If only he knew how close I'd come to needing it yesterday. Let's hope you're right. Thanks for taking my call on Sunday. Always a pleasure. Let me know if you want to schedule a formal consultation about your portfolio. After hanging up, I sat staring at my notes from the conversation. Mental competency evaluations, documentation ready, medical opinions prepared, emergency procedures. Harry and Mary hadn't just planned to rob me. They'd engineered a complete legal framework to justify stealing my life. The phone rang suddenly, startling me from my thoughts. Harry's name appeared on the caller ID again. This time, I answered. Hello? I answered the phone with deliberate weariness, as if the effort of reaching across my desk required considerable energy. Dad, thank goodness. I was worried sick about you leaving early yesterday. Harry's voice carried what sounded like genuine concern, though I now recognized the calculation beneath it. Are you feeling all right? Oh, Harry. I let my voice trail off slightly, as if gathering thoughts had become difficult. I've been having these terrible headaches. Hard to concentrate on anything. That doesn't sound good. Maybe we should have you checked by a doctor. Mary and I could drive you to the clinic this afternoon. Perfect. They were accelerating their timeline, exactly as I'd hoped after disrupting their original plan. That's very thoughtful of you both. I've been feeling so confused lately. Don't worry, Dad. We'll take care of everything. We'll be over in about an hour, okay? After hanging up, I spent 30 minutes preparing for the performance of my life. I mussed my hair slightly, put on an old cardigan that made me look frailer, and practiced the slower, more hesitant movements of genuine elderly confusion. When their car pulled into my driveway, I was ready. Norman, we brought some papers that might help with your situation, Mary announced as they settled into my living room. She'd brought a leather portfolio that looked expensive and professional, the kind lawyers used for important documents. Papers? I blinked at her with what I hoped appeared to be genuine bewilderment. What kind of papers? Harry leaned forward, his expression earnest. Dad, we've been researching ways to help you manage things better. Your finances, medical decisions, that sort of thing. Manage? I'm not sure I understand. I rubbed my temples as if the conversation was causing physical pain. Everything seems so complicated these days. Mary opened the portfolio with practiced efficiency. These documents would give us power of attorney to help with your banking, bills, medical appointments. Think of it as having a backup system. The forms looked professionally prepared, with highlighted sections marked for my signature. Someone had invested serious money in legal consultation for this theft. I stared at the papers as if they contained hieroglyphics. It's all so overwhelming, I murmured. I used to understand these things better. That's exactly why we need to do this now. Mary pressed gently. Before things get more confusing for you. Harry shifted uncomfortably. Dad, are you sure you're okay? You seem really different today. I looked at him with what I hoped was confused gratitude. Different? I don't feel different, just tired all the time. These headaches make it hard to think clearly. Mary and Harry exchanged a glance, the same coordinated communication I'd noticed at the party, but now I understood its purpose. They were evaluating whether I was impaired enough to sign documents without fully understanding their implications. Norman, these papers would just make it easier for us to help you. Mary continued, you wouldn't have to worry about managing everything alone. I suppose that would be nice, I said slowly, picking up one of the documents with trembling hands. But this is such a big decision. My head is pounding, trying to think it through. Of course it's a big decision, Harry said quickly. Take your time. Mary's patience looked more strained, though don't you think it would be easier with family help? You trust us, don't you? Of course I trust you. You're family. I set the papers down carefully. But could I maybe sleep on it? Decide tomorrow when I'm thinking clearer? These headaches make everything so fuzzy. Harry and Mary looked at each other again, and I could see Mary's frustration barely contained beneath her caring facade. Sure, Dad. We'll come by tomorrow morning, and you can sign them then. After they left, I allowed myself to slump in my chair, dropping the performance for the first time in hours. The documents they'd left behind told the complete story. Power of attorney forms that would give them control over my finances, medical decisions, and living arrangements. Everything James had warned me about, laid out in legal language, designed to steal my life. 3 hours later, I sat in my home office reviewing my notes from Harry and Mary's visit. Like a general planning a campaign, their power of attorney documents lay spread across my desk. Professional forms that would have given them complete control over my finances, medical decisions, and living arrangements. Every signature line highlighted in yellow, every witness requirement meticulously marked. They'd done their homework, but they'd forgotten I'd spent 40 years doing mine. Catherine Davis answered on the second ring. Norman, good evening. What can I do for you? Catherine, I need notary services tomorrow morning for some family financial documents. Could you come to my house around 10 o'clock? Of course. What type of documents are we dealing with? I chose my words carefully. Power of attorney forms. It might be a somewhat sensitive family matter, so I'd appreciate your professional discretion. You know you can count on that. I'll bring my seal and journal. Perfect. Catherine had notarized dozens of contracts for my construction business over the years. She'd recognize irregular pressure tactics or coercion immediately. It was part of her professional training. Next call, James Miller. James, could you stop by tomorrow morning around 10? I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I'd like to review my portfolio in detail. Certainly, Norman. After what we discussed about financial management assistance, I think a thorough review would be wise. Excellent. It might be educational. James chuckled. I'll bring the necessary paperwork. See you at 10? Educational indeed. James would witness whatever Harry and Mary planned to do, and as a bank vice president, he'd understand exactly what he was seeing. More importantly, his presence would add legal weight to any documentation of their behavior. Final call, Harry. I let my voice carry the tremulous uncertainty I'd performed that afternoon. Harry, I've been thinking about those papers you brought. You were right. I do need help managing things. Dad, that's wonderful. Mary will be so relieved. We can come over first thing tomorrow morning. I've arranged for a notary to make everything proper and legal. 10 o'clock sharp. Perfect. And Dad, thank you for trusting us with this. Trust. The word sat bitter in my mouth, but I managed to sound grateful. You're my family. Of course I trust you. After hanging up, I walked to the window overlooking my backyard. Ellen's rose garden needed attention, another task I'd been managing alone since her death. Tomorrow would determine whether I'd continue managing it as a free man or watch it wither from some assisted living facility while Harry and Mary divided our life's work. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and wrote down the sequence of events I expected tomorrow. 9:45 a.m. Catherine arrives, sets up notary materials. 10 a.m. James arrives with portfolio documents. 10:05 a.m. Harry and Mary arrive, expecting easy document signing. 10 a.m. Professional witnesses observe their manipulation tactics. 10:15 a.m. Truth emerges. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. They'd researched how to steal my independence through legal procedures, but they'd forgotten that legal procedures require proper witnesses and documentation. Tomorrow, those same requirements would expose their betrayal. 20 miles across town, Harry was probably explaining to Mary how cooperative I'd sounded, how the notary would make everything official, how close they were to controlling millions of dollars. They'd celebrate tonight, confident that a confused old man had finally accepted their help. They had no idea they were walking into a trap set by the same business mind that had built what they were trying to steal. I looked at Alexa's drawing on my refrigerator, our stick figure family standing beside a crooked house. Tomorrow would determine whether that little girl grew up with grandparents who protected her or parents who taught her that family loyalty could be bought and sold. Ellen's voice echoed from 3 years ago. Promise me you'll always take care of Alexa. I intended to keep that promise. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. I slept little that night, but when Catherine arrived at 9:45 with her notary seal and journal, I felt completely prepared. Good morning, Norman. Beautiful home office, she said, arranging her materials on the side table. This should be straightforward. James knocked precisely at 10, carrying his banker's portfolio. Morning, Norman. Ready for that portfolio review? More ready than you know, I replied, positioning myself behind my desk as footsteps approached the front door. Harry and Mary entered with confident smiles and their leather document case. They paused when they saw Catherine and James, but Mary recovered quickly. "How thoughtful of you to arrange professional assistance," she said smoothly. "This will make everything so much more official." "Indeed it will," I replied, my voice carrying none of yesterday's confused frailty. "Please, everyone take a seat." Harry settled into the chair across from my desk, still smiling. "Dad, you sound much better today. More like your old self." Exactly like my old self. Sharp, observant, capable. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes directly, which is why I need to tell you something before we sign any documents. Mary's pen stopped moving across her checklist. "Norman, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong with me, Mary, but I'm completely aware of your plan." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Harry's smile faltered. "Dad, what plan? We're here to help you." "I know about your visit to James's bank last Tuesday. I know about the guardianship procedures you researched. I know about the mental competency evaluations you plan to arrange." Harry's face drained of color. Mary's carefully controlled expression cracked for just a moment before she attempted damage control. "Norman, you're confused. We visited the bank about our own financial planning." "James," I interrupted, turning to my friend, "would you mind sharing what they discussed during their Tuesday afternoon appointment?" James cleared his throat professionally. "They asked detailed questions about conservatorship procedures, documentation requirements for declaring someone mentally incompetent, and expedited court processes for emergency financial management." Catherine looked up from her notary journal, suddenly alert. "Mr. Price, are you saying these power of attorney documents were prepared under false pretenses?" "I'm saying they planned to have me declared incompetent so they could steal everything I've worked 40 years to build." Harry found his voice, though it came out strangled. "Dad, we were worried about you. Yesterday you seemed so confused. Yesterday I was performing. Today you're seeing who I really am." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the documentation I'd prepared. 247 transactions over 3 years, $70,000 in support payments, every mortgage payment, every car repair, every private school tuition bill, all documented. Mary leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. Those were legitimate family expenses. Conditioning payments, training me to say yes to increasingly larger amounts until I'd agreed to sign away my independence. I looked directly at her. "You researched exactly how to have me institutionalized while you divided my assets." Catherine set down her pen. "This is highly irregular. I need to understand the full situation before notarizing anything." "The full situation," I continued, "is that my son and daughter-in-law spent weeks researching legal procedures to steal my money, consulted with lawyers about guardianship processes, and planned to have me declared mentally incompetent based on fabricated evidence of confusion." Harry's hands shook as he gripped the armrests of his chair. We just thought you might need help managing things." "Help managing a net worth of $2.3 million plus 3 rental properties?" My voice hardened. "Help that required consulting attorneys about emergency conservatorship procedures?" Mary stood abruptly. "You're twisting everything. We love you." "Love doesn't involve conspiracy, Mary. Love doesn't involve researching how to steal someone's independence while they're still healthy and competent." James spoke quietly. "Norman, the questions they asked were very specific. They knew legal terminology that most families never encounter unless they're planning something significant." Catherine nodded grimly. "In my experience, legitimate family financial planning doesn't require research into mental competency evaluations." The room fell silent except for Harry's labored breathing. He looked at me with something approaching recognition, perhaps seeing for the first time the businessman who'd built the wealth they'd tried to steal. "What happens now?" he whispered. I stood feeling every year of my age, but also every ounce of my accumulated wisdom and experience. "Now we discuss consequences." "Consequences," I repeated, opening my desk drawer to retrieve the legal documents I'd prepared over the weekend. "I'm changing my will immediately. My estate will go into an educational trust for Alexa, accessible when she turns 21. Harry leaned forward desperately. "Dad, please. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. The trust will provide for her college education, graduate school if she chooses, and startup funds for whatever career path she selects." I spread the new will documents across my desk. "Catherine, I need these witnessed and notarized." Mary's voice cracked slightly. Norman, you can't do this to your own family. I'm protecting my family, I replied firmly, from parents who were willing to steal her grandfather's independence to fund their lifestyle. Catherine examined the documents professionally. Mr. Price, these terms are quite specific. There are conditions attached. If Harry and Mary formally renounce all claims to my estate and demonstrate genuine change over the next year, I'll reconsider. But they must prove they've become the parents Alexa deserves. James nodded approvingly as he witnessed my signature. The educational trust structure is excellent. She'll have every opportunity you never got to provide directly. Harry buried his face in his hands. What does genuine change mean? How do we prove that? By getting jobs that actually support your family instead of depending on me. By prioritizing Alexa's happiness over your own financial desires. By showing me that my granddaughter matters more to you than my bank account. Mary stood abruptly, her composure finally cracking completely. How are we supposed to live without your support? The same way millions of other families do, through honest work and responsible spending. The mortgage assistance ends today. The car payments stop immediately. You're both adults with college degrees. Figure it out. Catherine finished notarizing the documents with practiced efficiency. Everything is legally binding now. Mr. Price, you should keep these in a secure location. My attorney will have copies by this afternoon, I assured her. After Catherine and James departed with handshakes and promises of discretion, the three of us sat in uncomfortable silence. Harry looked broken. Mary appeared to be calculating survival strategies. Is there anything else you want to say? I asked. Harry met my eyes for the first time since the revelation began. I'm sorry, Dad. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm genuinely sorry. Mary said nothing, which told me everything about her priorities. Words are cheap, Harry. Actions over the next year will determine whether this family has a future together. 3 hours later, Alexa knocked on my door, her school backpack still slung over her shoulder. Grandpa? Mommy said you wanted to see me. I knelt to her eye level, just as I had in the hallway 2 days ago. Come sit with me, sweetheart. We need to talk about some grown-up things. She settled beside me on the couch, her 8-year-old wisdom already sensing something serious. Is this about what I told you? Partly. Your mommy and daddy made some bad choices about money, and there have to be consequences. But none of this changes how much I love you. Are they in trouble? They have to learn to take better care of themselves and you. But Alexa, I want you to know that your future is completely safe. I've made special arrangements to make sure you can go to any college you want, study anything that interests you. Her eyes brightened slightly. Even veterinary school? That's really expensive. Especially veterinary school. And if you change your mind and want to be an engineer or a teacher or start your own business, there will be money for that too. What about Mommy and Daddy? They're going to work very hard to become better parents. And if they succeed, our family might be able to heal from this hurt. But even if they don't, you and I will always have each other. She hugged me tightly, and I felt Ellen's presence in that embrace. 3 generations of love continuing despite betrayal and broken trust. Can we look at college brochures? Alexa asked. I want to see what veterinary schools look like. Absolutely, I smiled, reaching for my laptop. We have all the time in the world to plan your future. Outside, spring was turning to summer, and Ellen's roses were finally beginning to bloom. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.